So we're going to get into a question that I think really defines Hollywood. What actually makes a film successful?
Right.
Is it that immediate box office smash, the roar of the crowd, or is it something else?
Something that lasts a lot longer.
Exactly, something with longevity. Or, that quiet but steady stream of cash that comes in years, even decades, after the theater lights have gone down. Because everyone loves to throw around the phrase, the biggest movie of all time, but, well, the numbers are just so much more complicated than the headlines let on.
They really are. It's a fascinating puzzle because the answer you get depends completely on the financial metric you decide to look at.
How so?
Well, our source material makes it really clear. There's a big difference between that universal figure we all see reported, the theatrical box office gross, what they call the nominal figure, and the much more complex reality of a film's total economic footprint.
So the movie celebrated as #1 in the news might not actually be the biggest earner in the long run.
Very often it's not. It's frequently overtaken by let's say, a quiet financial behemoth once you start to account for every single revenue stream. And this is the crucial part, the historical context.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to try and cut through some of that complexity. We're going to analyze cinematic success by looking at that clash of metrics.
Exactly.
We'll examine the theatrical earnings, both the raw and nominal totals, and the indispensable inflation-adjusted figures.
And then we have to talk about the franchise model.
Oh, definitely. We'll dissect the complete dominance of the modern franchise. And finally, we'll uncover some of the surprising, sometimes just staggering ways that films generate these astronomical sums of money way beyond that opening weekend ticket. So let's unpack this detailed financial story.
Let's do it.
Okay, so when a film breaks a record, the news always defaults to one measurement. Theatrical box office earnings. This is the figure that gets plastered across every trade publication on the planet. Why is that specific? And you could argue, pretty narrow metric, the nominal gross. Why is it the default industry standard, even when we know it's so incomplete?
Well, it really comes down to a mix of practical necessity and just plain old tradition. Theatrical box office figures are the primary metric because the data is the most readily available.
It's public.
It's public, it's standardized, and it's transparent. Compared to the private sales figures for home video or licensing or merchandising or broadcast rights, the box office is tracked publicly, almost in real time.
So it's just the easiest number to grab.
It is. And historically, you have to remember that for decades, before television or home video even existed, the box office was the only public measure of a film's success.
That makes sense.
So it provides that immediate, comparable, and, easy to digest global scoreboard that everyone, from the studio financiers down to the general audience, can look at and understand.
But those theatrical earnings, as big and headline-grabbing as they are, they really only tell a fraction of the story of a film's ultimate financial success. I mean, if a studio is spending $300 million to make a film...
Or more.
Right, or more. They need a lot more than just the box office to actually turn a profit.
Oh, they absolutely do. And to really get the full picture, you have to look beyond the box office to understand that total economic impact, what they call the long tail of monetization.
Ancillary revenue.
That's the one. Ancillary revenue streams are the true gold mine for the industry, and they often get completely overlooked in those big headlines.
So what's the first big one we should look at?
Home entertainment. It was the first major non-theatrical revenue stream, and it was a game changer.
Do we have a good example of that? A really clear one?
The sources point to Titanic as the perfect case study. Everyone remembers its theatrical run in 97, 98, right? It was a record-breaking phenomenon.
Of course, it was everywhere.
But the sources indicate it then went on to generate, get this, an astonishing additional $1.2 billion.
Wait, $1 billion? Just from video and DVD sales and rentals?
Just from that alone. That revenue came in steadily over years, and it proved the long-term viability of a film as a commercial asset long after it left theaters.
$1.2 billion. That's essentially creating a whole second Blockbuster's worth of revenue just on the back end.
Precisely. And while it's harder to get complete audited sales data for some of the other massive hits, we know the trend is consistent.
So Titanic isn't an outlier?
Not at all. Take Avatar, for instance. It sold 30 million DVD and Blu-ray units worldwide. When you factor in that home video income, both Titanic and Avatar have easily earned well over $3 billion each.
Wow.
which demonstrates that the theatrical ranking, that list everyone quotes, it often masks who the true financial powerhouses are.
It makes you realize just how misleading that nominal theatrical ranking can be when you're trying to judge a film's total lifetime value.
It is, and that's even before you factor in things like television rights, which are often non-negotiable for these huge blockbusters.
Right, the TV deals, how much are those worth?
Well, the sources note that as recently as 2010, a major film could often earn the equivalent of 20–25% of its entire theatrical gross just from selling the rights for 2 television runs.
A quarter of its box office, just for 2 airings on TV.
Just for 2 initial runs, and that's before you get to subsequent pay-per-view and cable revenues. Studios use this predictable income stream to help offset their staggering production budgets. It's a huge part of the financial model.
Can you give us a concrete example of that value, like a hard number?
Certainly. And again, Titanic provides an excellent data point here. Beyond the box office and home video, the film earned a further $55 million from NBC and HBO for just a few early broadcast runs.
$55 million.
And that $55 million alone was about 9% of its entire North American theatrical gross. So when a film is what they call highly exploitable...
Meaning it appeals to everyone.
Exactly. It appeals across demographics. It has massive rewatchability. For those films, ancillary revenues from broadcast and home video provide this foundational layer of profitability that can far outstrip the studio's actual share of the initial ticket sales.
Okay, so let's ground ourselves for a moment in that current nominal theatrical measurement, the one everyone references as the immediate scoreboard. We know that high watermark has been raised significantly in the modern era.
It has, yes. Right now, there are 7 films in cinematic history that have crossed the $2 billion threshold worldwide.
7 films.
And that's setting the absolute modern benchmark for immediate global appeal. And again, these figures are nominal, unadjusted value.
So who's at the top of that list?
At the very top, we have Avatar with over $2.92 billion. In second place is a huge franchise player, Avengers, Endgame, at nearly $2.8 billion.
Okay.
Then you have the sequel, Avatar, The Way of Water at $2.34 billion, and then the original Titanic at over $2.25 billion, and that's thanks to its numerous re-releases over the years.
What's truly fascinating when you look at that top list is the influence of a single creative person.
Oh, the James Cameron influence is remarkable. It's statistically unparalleled.
He has 3 of the top 4.
He wrote and directed 3 of the 4 highest-grossing films by nominal value. Avatar, The Way of Water, and Titanic.
That's just incredible.
This level of consistent commercial success right at the very top, it's not a coincidence. It reflects this unique ability he has to combine pioneering visual technology with globally resonant emotional stories, and then these really strategic, almost surgical marketing and distribution campaigns.
He creates an event.
Yeah. Cameron has consistently pushed the technical boundaries, which justifies premium ticket prices like the 3D uplift for Avatar, and that translates directly into higher nominal grosses.
Right. So moving on from individual successes like Cameron's, if we zoom out and analyze that entire nominal earnings chart, there's a profound shift in what audiences are going to see.
A huge shift. If you look back 50, 60, 70 years, the most popular and highest grossing genres were things like historical epics, massive roadshow musicals, prestige war films.
The big spectacles of the time.
Exactly. The 21st century, however, has become overwhelmingly dependent on franchise films, on established intellectual property or IP and adaptations.
And this shift isn't just about what people are watching. It surely reflects a change in how studios approach risk.
That's the core of it.
It's just so much easier to launch a multi-hundred-million-dollar production if you already know the audience has a vested interest in the characters or the universe.
The sources provide really compelling evidence of this, especially when we break down the specific franchises dominating that nominal chart. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, the MCU, it boasts this robust and consistent presence. It's placed 11 of its films among the nominal top earners.
11. That's not just a series of hits, that's systemic success.
It is. Avengers. Endgame is the second highest nominal grosser of all time, and 4 films that are based directly on the Avengers comic books all chart within the top 20 highest grossing films globally. It demonstrates not just a hit movie, but a massively successful shared universe strategy.
And while Marvel is clearly the king of that model, this reliance on existing IP extends right across the board.
Absolutely. We see the enduring appeal of other established properties. The Star Wars franchise, for instance, has 5 films currently on that nominal earnings chart.
Decades after the original.
Decades later, it's still pulling in massive theatrical revenue. And similarly, the Jurassic Park franchise features prominently. It proves that once a property successfully establishes a global identity, the sequels and the reboots, what we call the pre-sold concepts, they become low-risk, high-reward financial engines for the studios.
Okay, so given that landscape where it feels like every other film is a sequel or an adaptation or part of a bigger shared universe, the one major exception to this rule right at the very top stands out even more.
That is undeniably Avatar.
An original idea.
Completely original. Despite the vast majority of that top nominal chart being crowded with adaptations from comic books, established literary properties, or sequels, the #1 nominal earner, Avatar, remains an original concept.
It's such a powerful outlier.
It is. It demonstrates that while IP absolutely minimizes risk, a truly revolutionary technical and visual experience can still capture the global zeitgeist and achieve unprecedented commercial heights, even as a standalone idea.
Now, moving beyond the superhero spectacle, we should also acknowledge the consistent financial strength of animated family films.
Oh, definitely.
They prove that multi-generational family audiences continue to drive these colossal global numbers, particularly because animation, it travels so well internationally. There's no language barrier in the same way.
And Disney and its Pixar division just dominate this segment with remarkable consistency. The nominal list includes massive successes like Frozen and its sequel, Frozen 2. Then you have the 2019 computer-animated remake of The Lion King, Inside Out 2, Incredibles 2, and Toy Story 3 and 4. These are films designed from the ground up to have universal appeal, which maximizes their global box office reach.
And we should emphasize that this success is truly global. It extends well beyond the American studio system.
Indeed. The list includes highly successful films that originate outside of Hollywood. And we have to note the immense international power of animation, especially out of China. The film Ne Zha 2 is listed impressively as the highest-grossing animated film overall from any nation.
Where does it sit on the main chart?
It commands the 5th highest nominal gross globally at $2.21 billion. That success really signals the rise of non-Western markets playing a crucial role in setting these new nominal benchmarks.
All these massive numbers, though, they bring us to a really critical, maybe a technical point about relying on modern nominal totals. And that's the challenge of reliable data in accounting.
This is a complex but really necessary area to get into. The sources specifically mention accounting irregularities and issues with double counting at various box office tracking sites.
Double counting.
Yes, particularly when factoring in re-releases. Modern nominal totals, while they're convenient, are far from pristine. For example, films like Titanic, Spider-Man, No Way Home, and The Dark Knight Rises all have noted issues in their reported totals, often stemming from errors in how re-release data is aggregated.
Can you detail what that double counting actually looks like in practice? How does that happen?
Certainly. So when a film is re-released years after its initial run, the new box office gross should simply be added to the existing cumulative total.
Seems straightforward enough.
It should be. But the sources show instances where, in certain territories like Spain or Australia, tracking sites have inadvertently double-counted the original release grosses from those territories when they were aggregating the re-release numbers years later.
Oh, wow. So they're counting the first run twice.
Essentially, yes. And these discrepancies can introduce tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars of error into the reported nominal totals.
So that makes the comparison between films with multiple re-releases, like Titanic and Avatar, really tricky when you put them up against a single-run film like Avengers Endgame.
It becomes inherently fraught with difficulty, and that is why true analytical rigor demands we move beyond this nominal chart and look at inflation.
Right. And that difficulty in comparing modern films with their format price variations and these double counting issues, it just pales in comparison to the problem of comparing a modern film to one released 60 or 80 years ago.
That was a different universe.
Why are unadjusted nominal rankings essentially, as the sources put it, largely meaningless for comparing films so widely separated in time?
It comes down to a fundamental economic reality. The sheer increase in the price of a movie ticket and the change in consumer purchasing power over decades.
So $1 just isn't what it used to be.
Not even close. A commercially successful film from, say, 1950, which might have sold 100 million tickets at 25 cents each, will never, ever appear on a modern unadjusted list that's dominated by films selling tickets at $12 each.
But that 1950 film captured a far larger share of the audience at that time.
A much larger share. And the adjustment process itself is not simple.
I was going to ask, how do you even do that accurately?
It's incredibly tricky. Standardizing a worldwide gross is a huge challenge. Global inflation rates, currency fluctuations, they don't move in parallel uniformly across the world, so it's hard to choose a single, accurate adjustment multiplier.
And then modern films have their own complications.
They do. Modern films introduce these specific format complexities. For instance, the release of films in formats like 3D, IMAX, and even premium large format screens. It significantly complicates the calculation of a simple average ticket price.
And Avatar is the perfect example of how that premium pricing can warp the nominal numbers even before you think about inflation over decades.
It's the central case study for this issue. When Avatar was originally released, nearly 2/3 of all tickets sold for the film were for 3D showings.
2/3.
And those carried an average price point around $10. About 1/6 of the tickets were for even more expensive IMAX showings, averaging over $14.50.
And what was the standard ticket price back then?
Compare that to the standard 2010 average ticket price of $7.61 for a 2D film.
So it's a huge difference.
It's massive.
Yeah.
If you just try to apply a general inflation rate to the film's total box office, you completely fail to account for the significantly higher revenue it generated per ticket by using these premium formats. Formats that previous blockbusters just didn't have the luxury of exploiting.
Which makes a direct chronological comparison almost impossible without really granular ticket sales data.
Exactly. It's very difficult.
Nevertheless, despite all these calculation difficulties, the importance of adjusting for inflation just can't be overstated if you want to establish a true historical record based on, well, the number of people who actually went to see the movie.
And when we perform that rigorous adjustment, the noise of modern blockbusters, which are fueled by high ticket prices and massive global expansion, it quickly fades. And we see an undisputed champion emerge from a completely different era.
And that champion is unequivocally the 1939 classic Gone with the Wind.
Correct. Gone with the Wind, first released just before the Second World War, is considered the highest-grossing film of all time when adjusted for inflation. Its success was just monumental.
What kind of adjusted number are we talking about?
Well, the estimates for its adjusted global gross vary a bit based on the calculation method, but the most widely accepted 2024 adjusted figure stands at approximately $4.45 billion.
$4.5 billion.
That immense total is a reflection of its initial mass popularity, its unique roadshow distribution model, and its numerous very successful re-releases over the decades when going to the movies was the primary form of mass entertainment.
It's also worth remembering that this film held the unadjusted record for 25 consecutive years.
A period of sustained cultural and financial dominance that we just do not see today. It's a different world.
So what does the rest of that top-adjusted ranking look like? What does it tell us about the tastes and the market share of past audiences?
The top-adjusted list, it provides this crucial counterbalance to the nominal figures we see all the time. It showcases the tremendous staying power of older, truly mass-market hits.
Films that just everyone saw.
Everyone saw them. They succeeded purely on generating immense ticket volume within smaller, more geographically constrained markets compared to today.
So who else is on that list?
Following Gone with the Wind, we see 1977's Star Wars at approximately $3.65 billion adjusted. Then comes the 1965 musical The Sound of Music at $3.05 billion.
A musical, right up there.
Right at the top. Then E.T. the Extraterrestrial from '82 at $2.9 billion. And Cecil B. DeMille's 1956 epic The Ten Commandments at $2.82 billion.
That top list, unlike the nominal list, it features such a wide array of genres. Epics, musicals, sweeping science fiction.
All of them demonstrating mass cultural saturation.
Now, before we move on from these historical figures, we have to dedicate a little time to clarifying a critical historical term. It often appears in older film records and can be really confusing for modern listeners, and that's distributor rentals.
Yes, this is a vital technical clarification. In historical financial analysis, distributor rentals are frequently cited figures, but they are sometimes mistakenly thought to be the total box office gross or even home video revenue.
And they're neither of those.
They are neither. A distributor rental is simply the distributor's share of the theatrical revenue. It's the box office gross minus the exhibitor's cut, the theater owner's cut.
So it represents the money the studio actually takes home from ticket sales, is that right?
Exactly. And the sources note that this split varied significantly over time and across different releases. Historically, when distributors often had more leverage, maybe through vertical integration, this cut averaged between 30 and 40% of the gross.
And what is it today?
For modern major studio films, this share averages around 43% globally. Though it can vary a lot by film and by territory, especially with opening weekend splits, which can sometimes favor the distributor by 70 or even 80%.
So when you see a high rental figure in an old document, it's just the distributor's take from ticket sales.
Precisely. Historically, rentals were often the preferred benchmark over gross receipts because they better reflected the film's profitability for the studio itself rather than just the raw audience turnout.
Okay, that makes sense. So looking at this timeline of record holders, the title of highest grossing film has shifted hands relatively few times, historically speaking.
That's right. Yet each transition marked a major cultural moment. The record has changed hands at least 11 times since the monumental release of The Birth of a Nation in 1915, which really set the first major modern financial benchmark.
And the sheer cultural and commercial longevity of those early record holders is just astounding.
It truly is. Both The Birth of a Nation and later Gone with the Wind each spent 25 consecutive years holding that #1 record.
Apiece.
Think about that sustained grip. That is half a century of cinema history defined by just 2 films. It demonstrates an era of a true cinematic oligarchy where hits lasted not just for years but for generations before being surpassed. This is completely different from the rapid cycling we see today.
And the sources highlight some interesting director rivalries defined by this record, where individuals were effectively competing against their own masterpieces.
We see 2 really distinct cases of this kind of directorial self-competition. Steven Spielberg was the first director to achieve this milestone. His visually groundbreaking 1993 film Jurassic Park surpassed the earnings of his own 1982 cultural phenomenon E.T. the Extraterrestrial.
He broke his own record.
And then James Cameron later emulated this rare feat when his 2009 technological marvel Avatar eventually broke the record that was previously held by his 1997 global romantic epic Titanic.
It's just incredible to have filmmakers capable of dominating the market so completely that only they can dethrone themselves. However, modern times saw a brief interruption to this Spielberg and Cameron dominance before Cameron reclaimed the crown.
That was a significant moment in cinema history, for sure. In 2019, Avengers: Endgame took over the top spot.
And that was a big deal.
It was historically significant because it became the first sequel ever to hold the record of highest-grossing film. It ended 36 years of exclusive dominance shared by either Spielberg or Cameron.
It signaled the ultimate triumph of that shared universe model.
It really did. However, Avatar reclaimed the top spot 2 years later, in 2021, after a strategic re-release. It pushed Endgame back to second place and reaffirmed Cameron's spot at the top, at least for now.
We can also track who consistently delivered the biggest hit of any given year. That gives you a view of consistent year-to-year commercial strength that's tied to some key creative figures.
When we look at the highest-grossing films by their year of release, 2 directors currently tie for the most annual chart toppers.
Who are they?
Cecil B. DeMille, known for his grand historical epics, and Steven Spielberg. Each had 5 films that topped their respective annual charts across their careers.
And who's behind them?
James Cameron is close behind with 4 films topping their annual charts, and the Russo brothers, thanks to the immense productivity and consistent global appeal of the MCU, have 3 films that topped their respective annual release years.
Now, before we wrap up this historical segment, we have to address one of the most remarkable and, frankly, financially murky anomalies in cinematic history.
Yes.
The 1972 adult film Deep Throat. This story is necessary for historical context, but it requires some very careful handling.
It does. This is a complex historical financial matter, and we have to report it strictly as it's documented in the source material, ensuring we maintain a neutral, non-judgmental tone on the figures while recognizing the sensitive nature of the events.
Of course.
The sources state that in 1984, Linda Lovelace testified before a United States Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Juvenile Justice.
And she was speaking as a victim in the context of what she had endured.
Exactly, she was. And in that context, during her testimony, she made a claim, an absolutely astonishing claim, that the film had earned $600 million.
The sources note that if that $600 million figure were accurate, The film would have easily surpassed Star Wars and finished the 1970s as the highest-grossing film of its era. That's an unbelievable claim.
It is, which is why the sources treat it as highly speculative, at least in terms of legitimate box office sales. Exact figures are unknown, and they're very difficult to verify because that industry was operating far outside of mainstream distribution channels.
Was there any other financial data available?
There was testimony during a federal trial in 1976, so 4 years into the film's release, indicated that it had grossed only a fraction of that figure, slightly over $25 million.
So what context do the sources provide for such a massive discrepancy between that reported legal gross and the victim's $600 million claim?
The key context provided is directly related to organized crime. Mobsters reportedly owned most of the adult movie theaters during this period. Right. And the sources suggest that the reported box office receipts for the film were being deliberately inflated as part of complex schemes to launder income derived from illegal activities, particularly drugs and prostitution.
So they were washing money through the box office.
That's the allegation. By inflating the reported box office, the organized crime figures could use the film's supposed revenue stream to create a fictional, legitimate income, which allowed them to blend their illicit cash flow.
I see.
The main argument against that $600 million figure being legitimate box office is that the film simply did not have a wide enough mainstream release footprint to logically generate that amount of money through normal exhibition. It's a historical example of how films can be used for financial purposes entirely disconnected from their actual commercial success.
A fascinating, if deeply troubling, historical financial anomaly. It really highlights the challenges of authenticating figures outside of that established studio system.
It does.
So let's pivot sharply back to the modern era, where the word franchise has taken on just monumental financial significance. The sheer scale of this IP explosion is astonishing.
It is.
Over 100 film series have surpassed $1 billion in cumulative gross just since the turn of the century, since 2000.
And this trend is entirely linked to Hollywood's focus on the franchise model as a mechanism for de-risking these massive investments. These are films that are pre-sold.
Right. We mentioned that term earlier.
It just means they're based on existing intellectual property, which allows for much more effective marketing because the audience already has brand recognition and an emotional investment. The film itself is often just seen as the latest installment in a recognized, reliable brand.
And at the absolute pinnacle of this shared universe model sits the Marvel Cinematic Universe,
Right.
which has essentially become a cinematic utility company.
The scale is just vast. The MCU is currently the highest-grossing franchise overall. It's amassed over $32.48 billion across its 37 films.
$32 billion.
It's a sustained financial engine built on decades of comic book history. And to put that consistency into perspective, the Avengers films, the Frozen films, and the Avatar films are the only franchises in cinematic history where every single installment released so far has successfully cleared the $1 billion mark globally.
Every single one.
Every one. The 4 Avengers films alone average nearly $2 billion per film, highlighting the incredible financial reliability of that specific property within the larger shared universe.
So when we narrow the focus a bit, if we compare a massive shared universe like Marvel to a franchise that's based on a single, consistent property, who comes out on top?
The Spider-Man films stand out as the highest-grossing series based on a single property. They've earned over $11 billion at the box office across 16 installments, and that includes various series and animated features.
$11 billion.
But we have to bring back the context of inflation here one more time.
Of course.
While Spider-Man dominates nominally, the classic Eon James Bond films, due to their incredible longevity dating all the way back to the 1960s, have earned over $19 billion in total when adjusted to current prices.
$19 billion for Bond.
It just reinforces the idea that historical market saturation, measured by that adjusted volume, still holds massive value, even if the nominal crown sits with modern IP.
Okay, now let's revisit that critical concept we introduced at the start, ancillary revenue. This is where the true financial model of modern Hollywood really reveals itself, especially when the non-film income can completely dwarf the theatrical gross. This is the financial sweet spot.
This is truly the gold mine, and it's why studios are willing to invest hundreds of millions into establishing new IP. Merchandising, licensing, secondary rights. They can turn a successful movie into a multi-billion-dollar economic engine that operates long after the last ticket is sold.
Can you walk us through a specific property where the film was essentially a very, very expensive commercial for the real revenue stream?
The Lion King from 1994 is the definitive case study in this kind of IP diversification.
Okay.
While the film's original box office and home video sales generated a very respectable $2 billion cumulatively, that figure is utterly dwarfed by the other revenue streams it spawned.
What are we talking about?
The stage adaptation alone became a colossal success. It's earned an estimated $8 billion at box offices around the world, and it continues to generate income today.
$8 billion from the musical.
And on top of that, merchandising and licensing added an estimated $3 billion in retail sales.
So the film was merely the foundational asset for a much more profitable stage and merchandise empire. The theatrical gross seems almost negligible in comparison to the total economic value the property created.
Exactly. The film created the brand recognition, but the stage show and the toys generated the sustained profit. Another fantastic example is Pixar's Cars franchise.
Ah, yes.
The original 2006 film had relatively modest box office results, at least compared to other Pixar hits. It earned only $462 million globally.
Right, that's a respectable number. But it's hardly a world breaker for Pixar. And yet the financial performance of Cars is legendary in licensing circles. Why is that?
It's because of the merchandising strategy and the audience demographic they were targeting. The sources confirm that within 5 years of the original film's release, the Cars franchise generated over $8 billion in global merchandise sales.
$8 billion.
The specific genius here was targeting the preschool and toddler demographic. Those consumers require new products frequently as they age and grow out of toys, which leads to massive, consistent, non-seasonal sales. The licensing model allowed Disney to profit immensely without needing constant theatrical success. The sequel films were primarily made to refresh the merchandising line.
Wait, $8 billion in Cars toys generated in just 5 years. That is nearly 20 times the theatrical revenue, just in merchandise alone. It fundamentally flips the traditional definition of a blockbuster on its head.
It proves that the film's role shifts from being a profit center to being an IP generator. We see a similar phenomenon with other family hits. Toy Story 3, while it was a massive theatrical success that earned over $1 billion at the box office,
This is huge.
it generated nearly $10 billion in merchandise retail sales in addition to that theatrical success.
Incredible.
These examples really underscore that for modern Hollywood, the film's primary role is often just to cement the intellectual property and maximize its exploitable value in every other possible market. From theme parks and video games to clothing and toys, far, far beyond the price of a movie ticket.
So we started this exploration by asking what truly defines a successful film. After looking at the data and this clash of metrics, the answer is clearly a matter of perspective. It's driven by which number you choose to prioritize. Historical success seems to be measured in the sheer volume of ticket sales and inflation-adjusted dollars, where Gone with the Wind remains the undisputed ruler of ticket volume and cultural reach. Modern success, however, is measured by the immediate roar of nominal billions and the subsequent, far larger health of the ancillary merchandise and licensing empire, as we see with the MCU, with Cars, and with the Lion King's stage show.
And this leads us to the fundamental tension in the industry today. The sources show the entertainment world's increasing dependence on established IP and shared universes, and that's driven partly by the colossal production and marketing costs of modern blockbusters.
They're hedging their bets.
They are. And given that the next cinematic achievement needs to clear approximately $4.5 billion adjusted dollars just to challenge Gone with the Wind's decades-old top spot, we have to ask a critical question for you, the listener, to consider.
And what's that?
Will the next film to take the adjusted record ever be an original concept again? Or have we permanently entered an era where only the largest established universes, built on decades of recognized IP and capable of generating billions in ancillary revenue, can financially compete at the very highest echelons of cinematic history?
That is a question for the ages. Thanks for listening.